Hello, and welcome to the Heart of Law podcast, a platform for civil lawyers to share their personal and professional journey as lawyers and as people. My name is Mirena, and I'm your host. What I have uncovered during many interviews with great trial lawyers over the past few years is that every case opens new dimensions for them personally. Cases are like snowflakes, very unique in their own set of facts and circumstances. In pursuit of justice for a client that has been hurt, there is a very personal story for the attorney that explains why they take the case in the first place. And I love finding out what makes them tick, what inspires them, how they overcome not only the limitations of a case, but also their own limitations in order for justice and truth to prevail. My guest today is a very talented lawyer, a teacher, a mentor, philosopher, a husband, and a father that for over 3 decades has worked in the legal field, achieving great results for his clients. His name is Alejandro Blanco, and he's someone I call a friend. Alejandro's knowledge of presenting a case at trial has been developed over 30 years. He's the creator of trial structures, teaching the leading edge formula for opening statement and closing argument. Alejandro routinely presents at CLEs to some of the top lawyers in the country. He specializes in complex traumatic brain damage cases. Alejandro, welcome to the show. It's good to have you on.
Mirena, I am embarrassed and I am very thankful for your kindness. Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I have known you for some time now. I want to say 2012, maybe 2013. You have always been very interesting in conversation with me, and many people in our business respect you because of your work ethic, and of course, the results speak for themselves. You're someone that can really talk about anything. You know, I meet with people in this business all the time, and some people are just one-dimensional, and you're one of those people that has so many different ways about you that is captivating and intriguing. And so I am just excited to be in a conversation with you today. So again, thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And if you could stop trying to embarrass me, that'll be great.
I didn't know you were shy. This is cute. All right.
I'm not going red in my face. I'm not.
No. You look great. You look great. So share with me, where are you originally from? And tell me a little bit about your early beginnings.
Well, I was born in the northeast of Argentina, in a province called Corrientes, which in Spanish means currents.
Okay.
Actually, the town that I was born had a very, very long name, but it was founded or started on April 3rd, 1583. And I just happened to be born on April 3rd also, which,
Wow.
I proudly wore the Argentinian moniker for a long time because it was the same day that my town was founded.
Wow.
My early beginnings, I guess they tell me I was a precocious child. I was such a bother to my uncle, who was a law professor.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was a medical doctor, actually he's still alive. That I was taught how to read at age 3. That way I would stop saying léeme, which is read it to me, on stories. Actually went to, at age 6, my father came up to the US, the University of Syracuse, to do a master's of hospital administration there at their medical school. And I was 6 years old. They dropped me into 4th grade, I think it was. No, 2nd grade, I'm sorry, 2nd grade.
Mm-hmm.
And about a week into it, my father was approached by the director, the principal of the school, Irvington, Washington Elementary School in Syracuse, New York, and they said, your son needs special education. And my father says, he's not retarded. This is no the other way. Your son learned how to speak English in 3 weeks, so we need your permission to put him on 4th grade at age 6. And all I remember is everybody was like a head taller than I was, and much slimmer. I happened to be chubby, and all the kids were making fun about my being shorter than them what they were.
Yeah. Wow. So
But
did you stay in the US?
no, about 9 months later, when my father finished his program, we went back to Argentina, and there's another funny story. I was promptly put back on the 2nd grade in a Catholic school. I saw Mrs. Castillo grab the ears of the students and pull them up when they misbehaved so that they would trickle blood.
Oh.
So I learned pretty quickly the Catholic stance with your arms, your hands folded in prayer, not moving. So about a week later, Mother Superior comes to my father, and she says, your son needs special education. And my father goes, yeah, I know. She should be in 4th grade. And says, no, he's mentally retarded, because I would not move in order to comply with Miss Castillo's demand. So that's kind of my early days. Apparently, they thought I was intelligent, and they
thought you were intelligent in America, not in Argentina, which is why you ended up coming here.
Perhaps. I did go to high school in Argentina. I graduated there cum laude, gold medal stuff, and came to Berkeley at age 17. Was admitted to Berkeley. Had an opportunity to go to Stanford, but $10,000 a year in 1980 was a little bit too expensive for me. I wanted to save my father some money, and so I went to Berkeley instead.
And then did you go to law school in Argentina?
Yes, Argentina decided that it needed to fight with England in the early 80s. I was under military deferment.
Wow.
I didn't want to stay here in the US illegally, so I went back to Argentina and went to law school there.
Interesting. So you go to Argentina, you become a lawyer there. Did you practice there, or did you move to America right after law school?
No, I did. Argentina, during that time, Mirena was emerging out of military dominion, if you will, control. And there was a lot of activity, a lot of good, positive energy about what we could do in democracy. I hadn't participated on the left-leaning. My father was very right-wing, very conservative, so I hadn't participated in the creation of the democratic political parties, or I guess reinforcement. Everything had been suspended for about 8-9 years. So I happened to graduate in half of the time. Law school in Argentina is 6 or 7 years, depending on what goes, and I did it in about 3 years. And so after I graduated, I was offered to be the chief of protocol of my home state, assistant to the governor. I think that the only reason they offer that, it's not the only reason, but it's because I spoke English, so I could participate. But I had more of an international leaning. I was more interested in international law, so I accepted a position with a neighboring state, who happened to be the state of my wife-to-be, Rosanna, with a national party. And I was general counsel for the international under secretary, indirect ties with and at that time, the World Trade Organization precursor, the GATT, General Agreement of Trade and Tariffs. So I was very uppity in my legal training. It was all international law and trade and conventions. It was fun to talking to different ministers and delegations from different parts of the world. Yeah. So I practiced for about a year, until I realized that the only thing that National Party wanted legal was in order to politically correctly accept grafts. And so I left, I resigned and came to the US.
Wow. So did you have to go to law school here?
I did not. California has an interesting agreement. Whereas if you are an international lawyer and you can document that you have a program of studies that is approved by one of the countries that is in a treaty with the US, it will not discriminate. California won't, based upon nationality, and therefore they accept your degree. You just have to take the bar as a student or a foreign lawyer. Yes.
Wow, that's fascinating. I didn't know that was a thing. So you go to law school in another country, while your home country, you move to the US, you never go to law school here, and then you pass the bar in California, which is one of the hardest bars to pass. What year was this?
1987.
Wow.
No, yes, I was young then, Mirena. I happened to be 23 years old at that time.
Yeah.
What was interesting for me is because I had no training here in the US, I was broke. Now, this is my poor man's story. I offered volunteer to proctor for free one of the bar review courses, the bar brie, so that I could actually get the materials. And I studied like hell for 8 months while working part-time. And I took the bar just to practice it, to see what it looked like, what it was. And then I got this letter saying, congratulations, but you don't have the professional responsibility exam yet. So you cannot practice law. And I go like, I don't have I passed?
Wow. Wow. So has the US experience of, being a lawyer in the US, has that lived up to your dreams, your expectations? Do you have any regret?
Well, that's a loaded question, if you will. I think that as an immigrant or a nationalized citizen, and I know that you are also have come to the US, the image that we have about the United States is so aggrandized that it's really difficult for any person really, to quote Neil Diamond, coming to America to actually say, well, it is everything I expect it to be. On the other hand, America is much more than anything that we can ever be, I hope. And it is true that every person in the world would dream to come here. Yeah. So there has been, as a practitioner, a brokenheartedness in that we treat Americans here in America as children of a lesser God. While and this is done by our corporations, this is done by our government. It breaks your heart that what we worship the most, as an American, and the power that the will and the heart of one America standing alone has, is put down by corporations, by insurance companies, by the government. And so in that sense, it's been a broken heart type of situation, and a call to fight it again and over and over and over. On the other hand, it is beyond any wildest expectations. I mean, here I am, a boy from the northeast of Argentina who had nothing other than the dream to come north, being recognized in many circles as a good trial lawyer, as one of the better ones in certain areas. So sometimes I just pinch myself, and I go like, am I for real? Is this for real?
I mean, so that explains this, I guess, connection I have with you in a sense, because I mean, I know you weren't originally from here. You have a lovely accent. I wish I had your accent. I used to think that having an accent was bad for me, that I couldn't that I needed to lose my accent so I could fit in, but that was an insecurity of my early life. But I think I share the journey because dreaming as a young girl in a small town in Albania, in Elbasan, is where I'm from. The America that I created, the story, the country I created in my head was really based on the movies and the music we listened to and watched. And moving here certainly wasn't easy. I mean, it was quite challenging, especially the first 10 years were not easy, right?
Right.
But it is exactly what you say, because now I find myself, I'm in this field and I see how, the American citizen is treated by the government and by corporations. And it's very true. But at the same time, this country has power that no other country has. And I don't mean it in the military sense. I mean it in the entrepreneurship, in the ability for a woman to pursue a career, and really just go after your goals, go after your dreams. I think if you have the drive and the fire, you can accomplish anything. I believe that 100% in my life. So it explains this drive that you have for excellence, because if you're going to come all the way here and you're going to go through this rigorous, grueling schooling time, you better be the best. And you certainly, every time I see you, from the way you're dressed to the way that you speak to the way that you conduct yourself in trial, there is that excellence about you. And it's unfortunate that it came from a Catholic, school, but that's what makes us, the good and the bad. So it's fascinating, indeed. So do you live in California? Did you always live in California?
Well, no, I lived in New York as a kid. When I come back to Berkeley, yes, I lived in California, Northern California, for a while. Rosanna and I came back in '86, and we moved to Southern California, and we stayed there. Moved different places within the Southern California area.
Mm-hmm.
About a year ago, we moved to Rhode Island.
Oh, wow. Okay. Currently,
I'm in a little town called Barrington. It's very difficult to emulate the Rhode Island accent. Barrington, Rhode Island. It's Barrington, Rhode Island. It's literally that way, but 300 yards is Nagarasset Bay, beautiful Half Moon Bay. It's just gorgeous. And about 15 miles from here is Newport.
So did you join that movement of people just not wanting to be in California anymore because of all of the issues and COVID and fires and earthquakes? I mean, what is that? Okay.
Yeah, California is gorgeous. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're going to have somewhat of an earthquake, politically speaking, soon. It gets so after a while, it gets very difficult to just deal with the masses. If I had to go to court, which I still do, but now that I'm out of state, I can do it remotely. It was a 3-hour drive to court to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. So it gets to a point where, as marvelous it is, I did think about Del Mar, California. It's absolutely gorgeous there, but the Northeast has always been a place of interest to me. In Argentina, you have Harvard and Yale, the enunciations in Spanish of the different schools, and we're a stone's throw out of Brown. I always wanted to continue my legal education, get perhaps a JDS, which is a PhD in law. I love law. I mean, law is
why do you love law?
Well, it's part of the training. In Argentina, we follow more of a continental training. So we study philosophy of law, we study sociology of law, we study the evolution of law, we study history of law. One of my professors had his PhD in law out of La Sorbonne. Another one had a PhD in comparative procedure law out of the University of Strasbourg, I think it was. Mm-hmm. So, notwithstanding the limited understanding of some of the legal schools here in the US, legal training, and I'm sure the same thing in Albania, legal training is quite intellectually advanced. And the charge that we're given as doctors of laws, I heard Mark Lanier talk about being a doctor of jurisprudence, JDs. Mm-hmm. No, we are doctors of law in other parts of the world, is to heal the ills of society. We're not medical doctors. We are doctors of law. Mm-hmm. So the understanding of how thinking comes along politically, administratively. I have this administrative law professor. Administration or administrative law is looked down in the US, but in other parts of the world is kind of an elite practice, because you can affect how the government works within the structure of dealing with the citizens. So you don't have lawsuits to make the government. You have adequate administrative procedures. So to me, it's the ultimate intellectual exercise to affect wide-ranging changes. A kind of a mass torts, legally speaking, but without the lawsuits involved.
So let me understand. So you love law because you find it intellectually challenging. But I also heard healing society of its wounds. If you had to prioritize those two things, what would come first?
Healing. No hesitation. I mean, we are called to heal. We are called to right the unrightable wrongs. Mm-hmm. It's intellectually stimulating only affects the individual. It's kind of sitting down and discussing, for example, the difference between Jung's archetypal theories of the collective unconscious versus the father-son fight between Carl and his mentor, Sigmund. One thing is to see the nuances that the mind loves to play with. Another thing is to take care of the hunger and the needs and the cholera and the wars that are going on. So healing comes always first.
Yeah. So do you find, and I feel that, I hear that, because I don't know if people are conscious about this, but people go into jobs, professions, marriages, for sometimes the reasons of this intellectual stimulation or just material comfort or whatever it is. And then the need of the soul to become part of something that's greater than you, to contribute to a cause, to somebody's life, sometimes takes a back seat, and people have to either sometimes spend years or decades trying to figure out why they are what they are. And other times people are super aligned with their purpose. Did you go through a journey to find that alignment, or were you always aligned? And do you find yourself being pulled from your alignment?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm teasing.
Okay.
One time a lawyer asked me a question during trial in the disjunctive. He says, are these images from are these illustrations from actual imaging, or are these illustrations, computer illustrations? So it was a severe brain damage. And I said, yes. To which the gentleman responded, yeah, obviously you don't understand English very well, being English as a second language. And I responded with a smile that says, you asked a question in the disjunctive, and I answered both with one word. Boy, you just touched into a very interesting thing. It's always a journey. It's always a journey. I don't think that we are awake, to use, you use the word consciousness. I think you meant more of a spiritual awareness.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't believe that we are spiritually aware. We are able to see what is really there, starting around age 6, when we begin to be cultured or acclimatized to civilization, and we would need to write. I distinctly remember learning how to write the one, and being told that my ones were very wiggly, and I remember wanting to see the entire classroom, but being concentrated only on one aspect of reality. So I think that we are culturally taught to fall into a type of sleep. And I did, like everybody else. Apparently, what I was able to do is channel that energy from what I call unconscious. It's not unconscious, it's the rest of who we are, not just the left side of our brain, but the entirety of who we are, into learning, into intellectual processing and memory. I mean, I remember things from decades ago. But I needed more. It wasn't just the acquisition of information. It wasn't just the parroting and discussion of it. It wasn't quoting this author or that author, or it wasn't being able to teach French in French. My dad thought I should be a professor of French literature by age 18. It wasn't just that. It was, there has to be more to this. So after 11 years in the profession, around here in the US, I went to a trial lawyers college with Spence. And I had the amazing opportunity of meeting, well, Jerry and everybody else, but Bob Rose, who was the justice of the Supreme Court of Wyoming. He was dead by then, but they had videos of him. And meeting Bob really opened my heart, because the poor man had an eye patched. He was breathing through oxygen. He had cancer killing his body. But the resonance of his voice would tell you that he was alive. And once he's, just like I mentioned, Saint-Exupéry to you the other day, that we don't see but with the heart. We don't see well but with the heart. He said that there are mountains that we have to climb, but we can climb them. Now, one of the exercises that we were doing was going up and down the hills in Wyoming, and I wasn't seeing anything in terms of understanding. And one day I looked around the room and I understood that each person was materially a projection of who I was. And where I was in the moment was in a different place. And not just Wyoming, but in a different spiritual place. Of course, the work that you do there is pretty intense. You explore, you may not want to explore. I did. And it brought me back to before I learned how to write, to see fully with the heart and understand what was going on. And so since then, I've been very interested in that type of learning.
Yeah. So did they teach you? Because I know a lot of lawyers that have gone to trial lawyers college, and it seems to me that more of the emphasis is on you, the person, and who you have to become and transform, in a sense, to be able to perceive better, to feel your client's pain, and to relate it in a way that's tangible, truthful, authentic to a jury. And that's what, at least this is me, I've never been, and this is just me getting bits and pieces from people I've talked to. But that to me is developing your sense of feeling your sense of wanting to heal somebody, right?
Well, yes, absolutely. The main connecting tool that Travelers College has utilized is a methodology by Jacob Levi Moreno, who is a psychiatrist out of Austria, came to New York, and there's quite a following of his methodology. But he wrote in thick German rhetoric a science called sociometry, and within sociometry, psychometry or psychodrama. Of course, I couldn't just buy into whatever they were telling me it was. I had to buy the 3 volumes and read them all, along, with collected works of Jung and so forth. What I can tell you is that the data that they put down in the book are the portals to exploring who we really are. One exercise that I remember, which is one of the many, many things that Moreno discusses, is physicalizing the interior psychic. So you are experiencing something internally, and the brain, your ego, wants to shut it down and repress it. Well, in psychometry, what you do is you open it up and you make it physical. So you, within the room, within the audience, you pick somebody that represents, let's say, anxiety, and they have you reverse and physicalize anxiety so that you can manifest physically what you're experiencing internally, until you devoid yourself of all of the things that are happening inside and the ego is trying to repress. Well, I saw this lawyer put in 12 different energies that were going inside, and it was insanity. But the person was able to maintain. I can name names, but it doesn't matter. And I began to say, wait a minute, I know those feelings. I know those energies. And it allowed me to clearly see that the world outside is truly a manifestation of how we are resonating inside. Now, I haven't talked to you about my interest in physics, but I'm fascinated by M-string theory, because that means that the world, the physical world as we know it, is being created out of the quantum in resonance of vibrations in string every second. And so by uniting those two, what we know in physics and what I was perceiving and watching going on at Travelers College, it dawned on me that that not only is a personal exploration as to who we are, the majestic beings that we truly are, but also how to help people, deal with their damages. And that allowed me to truly present to the jury what happens to a human that is brain damaged. You talked about brain damage a little bit. What do they see? What did they hear? What did they smell? What is in their hearts? How do they sleep? And that has translated into the jury's understanding, getting it.
This is a great segue into trial structures, because this is a methodology that you have developed. This is your craft, and you teach lawyers around the country how to try cases. And I've heard you speak, and I see the passion and the drive and really the intellectual capability that you have to be in front of a bunch of lawyers, and they tell you about the case right there and then, and you come up with the opening statement and the closing argument. What's the expression? Give me a case, I'll give you a...
Give me a case, any case. Yeah.
Give me a case, any case. So how did you decide that you wanted to, teach lawyers around the country and spread, what you've learned? Tell me, and what boxed as a check for you to be able to share your experience with others?
Well, the answer to the first part of the question is I didn't want to teach it. First of all, I guess maybe I need an explanation of that. When I first come to the US in 86, and I'm a lawyer already, and I take the bar, pass it in 87, I was hungry. I mean, never went to law school. I heard people talking about trial teams during law school. I had no idea. Where do you stand in court? What do you do? The way I was trained by an experienced trial lawyer, he's then in his 60s, 62. I just turned 60 this year, so I was a young punk of 25. They handed me a file that was about a half an inch wide and said, here, there's a trial on Monday. This was Saturday morning. Go try it. Mm-hmm. What? So, of course, I went to conferences. I read desperate reading books and how-tos, and we didn't have trial guides back then, back in 88 and 89. And I did everything that people told me to do. None of it worked. I mean, I would hear this lawyer say, and this is how I did it, whatever. And back then it was like $1 million. And I would do it. And I get the jury to tell me, don't insult our intelligence. So I joke, Mirena, that I have tried everything at least 4 times to make sure it doesn't work. In trial. I have over 120 trials. I've done this type of argument. I did this. One favorite argument back in those days, early 90s, was the defense counsel will go to his high-rise ceiling, and he'll pick up that red phone, and he'll call the president of the insurance company, and he will say, we've defeated another legitimate claim, and hung up. And so I do it. I would do exactly what they told me to do. And, I didn't get a slap on the face by the jurors, but I was very close. And I became convinced that I was an idiot, that I was a complete nimwit. That Nimrod was an intelligent dude compared to me. When I go to Trial Lawyers College, I'm looking. Actually, I was about to quit law because there was a lady that had fibromyalgia, 29-year-old Stacy, and I couldn't help her. Nobody could help her. And I was very close to quitting. I saw Spence speak at a seminar, and I said, the guy's nuts. But then he kind of walked towards me and I said, I'll see you at Trial Lawyers College. And I'm like, okay. So I did go, just, and I was looking at the very best in the country in terms of teaching. And I was looking at lawyers that were dubbed to be really good. And I'm going like, they're like me. They do exactly the same thing I do. How come? Right? So and this is a little bit longer, what I learned is there is this idea that you're anointed to be a great trial lawyer. You can be the trial lawyer of a generation. You can be the best. You can transmogrify. And this is one thing that Spence said about him having transmogrified into the best lawyer of a country at his life, one of the best ever to live. And I realized that there was a lot of self-promotion. There was a lot of stuff that either, well, you have to be blessed. You have to have the voice, you have to have this and whatever. And I was all right with quitting law at that time. I came back, I put in place what I learned at Trial Lawyers College. I got $11,000 on a spinal cord injury case. And I said, that's it, I'm done. And within a couple of weeks or so, I got a phone call that I had been selected the best of the West for Trial Lawyers College. And I said, you got it all wrong. But somehow, somewhere, after 2010, I figured out that it wasn't me, that I was giving the jury too much information, that they needed things simplified. And up to that time, the technique was you give the jury information and they'll figure it out. So a friend of mine out of Omaha started sharing with me how he thought Spence really did things. And I began to adjust it to my way of doing it, and it started working. So a couple of years later, Dan Ambrose came up to me and I said, "Why aren't you teaching this?" And I said, "Well, nobody taught me. I have to figure it out on my own." And he said something that really stuck in my heart. He says, "People are hurting out there, Alejandro. They're lost and they follow everybody's, and they can't. If you know how to do it, you should teach it." And that stuck. So I started teaching it, thinking that nobody would understand what I said, but apparently they do.
You know, what's fascinating is that this, Jerry Spence has been sort of the nest of a lot of people figuring out how to do it and figuring out who they are in the process. But then another process begins. And I guess the process is of embodying that work and making it your own. And it has what you teach, although it has a lot of, commonalities with a lot of other methodologies, I'm sure it's different because it's your own spin to it. And that's what becomes unique. And different people hear different things from, different teachers. And so when you go to an event and you're sitting there, you're there to get your CLE, and you see 5 or 10 speakers on stage, chances are that 2 out of 10 are going to really resonate with you. And that's not necessarily the same for everybody in the room. Right. So I know that you worked or did a lot of teachings with Trojan Horse. And then at some point you continued to refine, continued to improve. You've gotten a lot of wonderful $20+ million verdicts around the country. And then trial structure became your focus, and that this is now your life's work. Tell me more about where you are with trial structure today.
Well, trial structure is a system, an organized system. With Dan, we co-founded Trojan Horse as a way of teaching. Him and I had a wonderful run. Dan is very enthusiastic. I just didn't want to take the horse where he wanted to take it, so we agreed to amicably continue our paths. The basic premises of trial structuring is my premise. I don't consider myself to be spectacularly talented one way or another. I knew that if we could deploy a structure, an organization of activities and connecting the story of the case, that it was systematic, a systems approach versus a talent approach, that then any lawyer could do it. And if I could do it, who had been proven, by beyond a reasonable doubt that I was a schmuck, then anybody could do it. And it really has proven that to be the case. Trial is war, is the battle of two persuasions. One which says they have done something wrong, they have violated our rules or our system of behavior, and they hurt one of us, and they don't care. The other one is, we didn't do anything wrong, and if we did, what are you going to do about it? Sue me? And so it's fascinating to me as an outsider, even though I've lived most of my life in the US, they still consider me an outsider, that the masses have been convinced that if somebody hurts you, you have the personal responsibility of fixing your own life.
Right.
Even if you're brain damaged, even if somebody causes cancer while you serve your country, that somehow, somewhere, you have to have personal responsibility. But think about that concept. So what trial structure does is it provides a bed, a system. I like to call it the Iron Man suit, because once you're in it, a regular human being can become heroic. And you can stand in the middle of a courtroom and demand that we listen to what they have done to one of us, and literature. And you cut through the BS, you cut through the narrative that it's not a big deal, that they didn't do anything wrong, and perhaps the person that got hurt has something to do with it. Now, the interesting thing is we have done the other type of learning, that the duty, breach, causation, damages, that we sometimes, and I tease Rick about this, that we need to polarize the case. Well, I say, Rick, sometimes they do find that your person is a lie, to cheat, and steal, and then you get a defense. So what happens when you have a convicted felon who was a drug addict, and he's hurt? What do you do then? That person doesn't deserve justice? What happens if you don't have the perfect? Mother Teresa didn't help the perfect people. She helped everyone. What happens if you cannot help because your client went on to, yesterday we did a webinar for trial structure. What happens if a brain injured person begins to use drugs in order to cope with the insanity that traumatic brain injury? You dump the case? Yeah. What do you do? So what we have done is we consistently and systematically have organized the structure of a case into segmental approach, segments that we teach and that are pretty much the same. Spence once asked, have you tried 100 cases, or have you tried the same case 100 times? And the question is, if you're hitting that invisible wall, and like a fly, you keep on hitting your head against that wall, eventually you're going to end up legs up, dead. The question is, how do we utilize the defense's own weapons against them? That's what we have done in the trial. I mean, I can expand, but that's basically the system, is utilizing the betrayal that they do onto us in order to, it's not even win, Mirena. What do we win for a person whose life is brain damaged? I have a client right now, a trial lawyer, a woman trial lawyer, who has a stroke as a result of a chiropractic adjustment, stroke in the left part of her cerebellum. Who can't practice law. And the defense lawyers are saying she wasn't going to be a good lawyer anyways. Where have we come in our insanity?
Yeah. So there is a really tough public attitude about lawyers and about our jury system and our justice system. So people are very skeptical to begin with. So the odds are against you day one, right? You have to then get the jury to a place that they're open to listening and looking at your client like a human being. You almost have to do what you were saying, like turn your jury into Mother Teresa, in a sense, to see without judgment, even though they're judging, they're there to judge, but without judging the person, because that person is there because they have been hurt. And you're seeking for monetary compensation. And that is in itself isn't enough, as you're saying. It's money is just one of many things that a human being needs. But you take these cases on, and this is through trial structure, methodology, and just being a lawyer in general, and the true trial lawyers that aren't afraid to try cases and go to battle for their clients. You have to navigate this, it's almost like you said, it's like going to war. Trial is hard on the mind and the body. And if you come out losing, it hurts, as you know, a lot. I mean, so obviously you were a lot more experienced, a lot more successful than you've ever been. But when you lose a trial, and I know it happens to everybody, how do you find the ability to go do it again? Because I'm thinking I would just be crushed, and I would be just licking my wounds forever. So how do you get back, and how do you go through that process?
Well, not too long ago, as you know, that happens. You feel the pain. You breathe it in. There's a book I read many years ago, The Magic of No Escape. I think it's Tangram or Tangam. It's an experience of breathing in pain, the pain of the world, and holding it inside, and then transmuting it into joy, and breathing it out, so that those who need it can breathe. It's not for everybody. It's not a masochist deal, but I asked Spence, what do you do with the pain? He was kind of walking away many years ago. He stopped and said, who asked that? Who asked that question? I had raised. I should have known. It's you, Alejandro. And I said, the pain of what? It's losing for your client when they have, he goes, you feel it. You feel it in your tenders. You breathe it in. You feel it until you cannot endure the pain anymore.
Mm-hmm.
When we lose, Mirena, a life is lost. Sometimes death. Sometimes they turn the lights out. Sometimes they don't. They can't. I mean, you were their last hope.
Right.
And you have to live with that. I know many of my friends, they say, well, the next trial, I'll just forget about it. And they go into a sense of numbing. But you can't do your best if you're numb.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Vincent van Gogh, he painted out of his pain. And then he did amazing work. I don't know if you stood in front of a Van Gogh lately, but if you haven't, you should go to Pasadena. The Simon Rosenthal Museum is Man in a Hat. It's a self-portrait, and it strikes you in the heart, and it pushes you back. So the artistry of trial work is to be able to experience that pain and to let go. We are instruments, if you are a believer in the Christ of mercy, if you're a believer in the universe and the energy of the universe, you're a conduit of the energy of the universe. What I learned is if I can lay to my rest, knowing that I gave it all, I'll just feel the pain. Mm-hmm. And then I'll breathe in and breathe out, and I'll stand again, because so many people need our help. Now, I wish I could say anything more helpful, but you have to fight the unbeatable foe. There's no way around it. Just have to stand and do it again.
Isn't that life though? I mean, it's like the profession itself is trying to right a wrong. I think our life is about righting our wrongs, but the mistakes or the failures along the way, at least from my experience, I used to be really tough on myself, or I still am. But I have developed this awareness that we talk about. I've become a lot more grounded, and I've come closer to myself, my own power, my own confidence as a woman, as a person. But I think it's all about contrast. Life gives you contrast. And then you have a choice to take the contrast and do the best you can to rise above, overcome, transform, expand in the process. Or it becomes this pattern of things don't work out for me, or things aren't, easy for me. And it's very, very easy to fall and default into like, life is hard.
Woe is me.
Right. And I think what I respect so much of what you do and many other trial lawyers that are successful, I mean, the most successful lawyers I know are very vulnerable beings and very much in touch with themselves, their awareness, their energy, their faith. And they're by no means, and they'll tell you, they struggle with imposter syndrome. They struggle with insecurities. They don't know if they like themselves, or if they, they don't fully, like, it becomes blurry, like who they are and where they fit in, because again, you kind of do this, but that's what's so special about these people. And that's, I think, what sets them apart, is that they're willing to embrace these feelings, and they're willing to live through these feelings, and they almost like sail through. In fact, I watched a documentary the other night, which I swear I went to sleep and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was dreaming, but it was a documentary about climbers. These climbers who will climb the tallest mountains without ropes. I mean, freestyling. And these are 20, 30-year-olds who just, that is living on the edge, right? Is their life's purpose. And one of the guys who unfortunately died in an avalanche in Alaska, he was 25 years old on his birthday. But before that, it showed the journey of why he was one of the best. And he would climb, in fact, in Patagonia, he climbed one of the mountains that's a well-known mountain there. I forget the name of the mountain, but it's like this small little town. It's like the scary mountain. Nobody's ever climbed it. So long story short, he had this ability to focus through just climbing and not thinking about what if I fall.
Right.
And I thought, that has to be one of the deepest, simple, very, very simple, but one of the deepest things to learn, because he had this intuitiveness about him to know that all he had to do is not focus on anything else, but on the next move, on the next reach.
Right.
And he was so comfortable with the mountain that he always found a way. You don't always find the way, and sometimes we do fall and we do die. But I think in that journey of pursuing what's true and what's meaningful, you're also living to the fullest. And maybe this is why we're here. Maybe it is to feel all these feelings and to know the value of life. So I think a trial lawyer does that a lot. A trial lawyer that's in touch with himself or herself in a courtroom, representing, you're advocating for somebody who needs you. It's heroic, it's respectable. And even if you lose, the fact that you tried and put your heart and soul into it is very respectable. So I admire what you do so much. And that's why I love this profession. I asked you why you love law. This is why I love it, is because I see glimpses of humanity in the most profound way all the time in this business. And I don't think you can say that in every industry or in every job, but it's very inspiring, and it moves me into action in my own field and the things that I do for a living. So yeah, I don't know. I went in on the tangent there. You see, you got me all
well, you said in terms of a journey, climbing is very akin to trial work. Every case has a move that if you do not do execute perfectly, we call it the crux.
Yeah.
If you do not execute the crux move perfectly, you die. You die.
Yeah.
And as a trial lawyer, you learn the few times that you don't execute.
Yeah.
You don't understand what happened. You think because you've done it, then you begin to be aware of when you don't do it, and you died, but the trial is not over yet.
Mm-hmm.
And after a few of those, you realize, okay, I'm going to avoid the crux. I'm going to do something different. In free solo, I forget the name of the climber, but he started climbing El Capitan and stopped because he knew he did not have the crux resolved, and went back a couple of years, sometimes later, and he climbed it again, and he had that resolved. And it's not the Rubicon of Julius Caesar, because the Rubicon is a very small river. It's not a big river, but there comes a time in law that you say, okay, what about me?
Mm-hmm.
What about me is not able to make this move? And so instead of a journey of learning a technique, what I have found for me is it's an exploration of the self. Some years ago, I read a book recommended by a Republican think tanker, A Clearing in the Forest.
Mm-hmm.
And that allowed me to retool the imagery of my life from a journey from A to a destination, death, from that to an exploration of the whole self that I am. In mythology, the jungle or the forest is a place where the feminine, the mythical feminine inhabits. And of course, males have a feminine, inner feminine. Yeah. And what I started to do was explore the entirety of that forest, not just the open parts and the pretty gardens, but the scary places. Mm-hmm. And since then, what I've noticed is there's been, and I guess it comes with age too, there's been a settling down of knowing who I am, of knowing that in this part of my forest, this is what I am, that this is, and putting that together with the stuff that I was mentioning before, the stereotypes of Carl Jung's analysis, the id, the ego, the superego, it gave me the sense, okay, the jury wants to do the right thing. The defense wants to sell a fake narrative or an absurd narrative. What kills that? What trumps, and I hate to use that word, but what cuts through that? What cuts through that morass? Mm. Truth,
authenticity,
and caring. When you come to the court and you leave it all, if you don't win, then nobody can win. Mm-hmm. I don't care if Mark comes on board and tries the case.
Yeah,
he might do a better job, but he won't leave his heart on the arena like we do.
Mm-hmm. One lawyer one time told me that, because I always ask the questions, I've always been curious about, okay, so you take on a case and, you're changing a person's life. And this lawyer said, not really. He said, the client changes my life. Regardless of the outcome, I'm never the same person after I meet a client and after I hear the story and after I take on the case and after I try the case. And whether I lose or I win, I am transformed by that experience. And I thought, wow, because sometimes you talk to lawyers and it's like, okay, I became a lawyer to represent people, change people's lives, to, be an advocate. The truth is, it's a two-way street, that these people affect you, whether you're aware of it or not. In your own personal development, they are there to teach you a lesson. And so if death wasn't so permanent of a concept in our humanness, in our human ways of thinking about it. And we're just these travelers through dimensions, and we meet the person on another dimension, and we can reflect on our experience with them of, what we did, how would we feel in that moment. I think that's quite the way of wanting to be as present and as helpful and as compassionate as you can be, regardless what happens. It doesn't matter what happens. I do believe we are eternal beings, and we move on, and we impact and help each other evolve in our life's process. So I think you're in touch with that so much. And I think that's what sets you apart from a lot of people. And maybe to some, this sounds like crazy talk, right? But that's okay. But I can tell you that results speak for themselves. And I'm very, very proud of what you've done, and how you continue to go to trial, back to back to back. It's unbelievable how you do that, especially if you don't have to, right? It's a choice. So it's very respectable. Let me ask you, where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you still see yourself in the courtroom, or do you have some grand plan at some point, drinking wine in Argentina or in Europe somewhere? Like, what do you want to do when you're not working?
Well, drinking wine definitely fits the bill. For a long time there, I wanted to have a vineyard in California, and I had this lawyer. She says, vineyards lose money. And I'm going like, I know. Well, I had this idea. My mind had generated this idea that I would be retired by age 55. Mm-hmm. So I retired 5 years ago, Mirena. But apparently nobody's picked up on that email or text.
No, because first of all, you continue to try cases, so I think you lied to yourself.
No, I didn't lie to myself. They just keep on, what I have been able to, in addition to everything that you say I've done, which I will not argue with you too hard. But you're right. The imposter syndrome, it does affect. I wonder, with everything that could have been done over this last 6 decades of my life, I wonder how I have accomplished so little. I also have, like many of our peers, and women travelers included, regrets that I haven't spent more time with my family. I have almost a 20-year-old daughter, and I remember holding her in my arms, singing "Baby Blue, Baby Blue Eyes," her to sleep. And I'd like to spend a hell of a more time with them. Of course, they are now going to school, universities, college. The other one is 15, going on 32. So a massive amount of that time, I would like to invest much more in the energy that is local, that is part of my nuclear atom, family atom. I have been married for 36 years to a wonderful lawyer, a master's of laws. I kid that one of the reasons I'm good in trial is because with 2 daughters and an LLM as a wife, there's no way I win an argument at a house. So I really have become really good. All I do is I mimic what they say, and I win. But in terms of the profession, I have become more and more persuaded that, just like you said before, I don't expect everybody to agree with Blanco. I mean, my style is not everybody's style.
That's right.
But at the same time, I know that we have touched and we have been able to connect with a number of people that actually take a systems approach as opposed to a personality approach. And then the personality comes forth. Ilya Lerma and I presented in 2018 at the Whitman with the Stars in AAJ, and I had mentioned to Ilya that as she learned the structure, it would shine through her strength. And she said, "Oh no, no!" And of course, right after she presented, everybody would come up to her, and you have such presence, you have such strength, you have the what? And she says, "No, it's the structures. No, it's the spin." And they go, "Sure, right." And I had told her, "Don't say it's a structure because they won't believe you." I believe that every lawyer has the ability to be a winning trial lawyer. I don't believe in dynasties. And I have no disrespect for anyone who is, like a superstar. But I believe we're all superstars because we all, as human beings, we all have the same ability. Perhaps not the same talents, but the combination of abilities, the combination of talents is unique and is amazing. Mm-hmm. And so it would be my hope that to reach out to those who sometimes doubt themselves. One of my pet peeves, as you and I have discussed offline, is how little do we do for the women that would like.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question as you were talking about Ilya, because I know that that's a topic that we've talked about and you're passionate about.
Well, in many of my studies, especially of mythology, the archetype of the man's warrior is the warrior, right? Quote unquote. But the tools of the male warriors are the club and the short spear. I mean, the short sword. And there is kind of a weird male need to see the life of the opponent escape. It's kind of it's a moment. And for that, males are willing to die, willing to engage in that fight. But it's got to be a close combat fight. The archetype of the woman lawyer, the woman warrior is completely different. It's the Amazon. And the Amazon fights with two specific weapons. One is the bow and arrow, which is the precision. And the other one is the javelin, the short javelin, also at a distance. But both are types. I don't know if you've done a lot of comparative religion studies, but types are very interesting in terms of unconscious symbols. Both are types of intellectual warfare. Mm-hmm. And it has been my pet peeve to see women trial lawyers being trained as males, because it's not just not pretty. It's dysfunctional. I wish we male trial lawyers learned how to fight with the tools of intellectual warfare a lot more. I don't know if you remember the Lord of the Rings. The guy was all white, albino, and he could shoot arrows. Or more recently in Marvel, the fellow that shoots arrows. And we have to strike at the heart of the lies to unravel the bullshit that insurance companies put together. We should learn from women trial lawyers as opposed to try to erase their functioning and teach them how to fight at close combat in cross-examination. Megan Richmond, a practitioner out of Southern California, she at Trial Lawyers College, I saw her do one of the best cross-examinations ever. And she never raised her voice, but it was when I sat there and I looked at that, I said, I need to have to learn how to do that. Mm-hmm. And most of my cross-examinations have become very respectful of the defense expert, and they know they're dead by the time I'm done with them. So yeah. Trial lawyers or trial structures, a big, huge drive that I have right now is to connect with Society of Women Trial Lawyers, connect with women trial lawyers, in order to have Ilya create a movement within trial structure, enhancing the power and the strength of women lawyers for all of it. I know I have concentrated most of my life in single event cases, but mass tort is definitely ready for women to take over.
So I've been around now a decade, which is crazy. Don't know how that happened. And
Wait until you look back at 3 decades or 4 and you go like, what happened?
I'm sure I will be sitting here one day saying just that. But in the 10 years that I have been around seeing this particular space, women really are powerful when they are in control of the case and of themselves, and they believe in themselves. But many women, I think, are faced. I think I was listening to a guy by the name of Jordan Peterson, and he talks about women in different professions. And he says it's really tough for a woman to be a lawyer. And the reason for that is because obviously a woman typically speaking, wants a career, also wants a family. And being a wife and being a mother and trying to compete with law partners who are in the office more than you, that have more time to spend on their craft, is difficult. So you're always feeling like you're left behind. And at some point, women don't even want to be partners because of the responsibilities and the burdens and the time that they're away from their families. And I thought, that's quite interesting, because it's easy to say it's a male-dominated industry, which it is. And I have met some incredibly talented women that are they slay dragons in the courtroom. But those women typically aren't married and don't have children. Typically, I am thinking of about 3 or 4, or some that will just get married much later in life and have kids much, much later in life once their career has been established. So I'm curious to know from you, how much do you think there is this gender, conflict, in the sense that there's more pressure on women to be, again, nurturers at home, versus the fact that it's a patriarch, type system, and men just simply want to dominate because that's all they know how to do? Like, how much of that do you think is true?
Well, I believe that the functioning of the male is different than the function of the female. The male is angular, is rule-based, is results-oriented. The function of the feminine is more nurturing, is relationships oriented. Mm-hmm. But I think that Dr. Peterson, I'm familiar with his work, is missing something that is really important. The hours in the office, the advancement, the learning, that's all because of 1800s type of organization of businesses, where women had absolutely no say-so on how to organize things. In today's society, especially in the world of social media, but in the world of our training, I don't see a reason why you cannot collaborate in a nano type of association where you associate for a purpose. Actually, Rosanna wrote her thesis on her LLM that the future of organizations would be specific for one task association and then dissolution. What women trial lawyers bring is extreme talent and results oriented based upon relationships, not upon results.
Right.
And so I while what Dr. Peterson says is accurate today, it's based upon a 200-year-old organization of time and schedules. What if a partnership is of a, and you have the Athea women trial lawyers, you have Deborah Chang, Candice Klein in California. They're organized, yes, they are, but they're all women. Yeah. So I just don't agree with the fact that it is a dominated place. I think it's a short-sighted organization where males feel much more comfortable getting together at 4 o'clock and grabbing a drink than to go and pick up their kids and watch their the soccer game. So it's not very conducive to ask me about whether males are better, because I don't think we are. I think
Well,
that we have.
not better. No. I didn't mean it like that. I think uh, men are typically, at least men who are seeking to advance themselves in their professions and that are driven and hungry, they will dedicate their life to being at the top.
Right.
And nothing gets in the way, right? Like children, marriage. The thing is, if they've got to be at the office for 60 hours a week, they're at the office for 60 hours a week, right? I don't think a woman can do, or I mean, I'm sure a woman can, but I don't think a woman wants to do that. And it's not a matter of ability, it's a matter of priorities that you ultimately decide to just say, you know what, I don't want that. That doesn't do anything for me. I want to be home with my kids more.
And what I'm saying, Mirena, is show me the man who's at the office 80 hours, 90 hours a week. Okay, so that's what it requires. I was there.
Yeah.
And I'll show you a man who has a loving partner, who's at home taking care of everything that he doesn't. Show me a guy that says that he is at the office 60 hours a week with as a single father, and I'll show you a catastrophe. So again, I think we're working, and I'm a child of the early 60s. I was born in 62, so still that time was in flux, right? My oldest girls call me old fart, in the sense that I'm a boomer, but it burns me to see so much talent wasted. Okay, so you can't have one person do 60 hours a week, but you can have two women associate trial lawyers put in 25, and they'll be worth 150 of those hours, because I put in the 80 hours, and a lot of those hours are BS. They're not actually work.
I don't believe that, but okay.
So I mean, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to get too, but I just believe that it is time that we.
I agree 100%. I really think that for me, like I've told you, I do a lot of work in mass tort, and I know some badass trial lawyer women that are getting, $100 million verdicts. Like it's nothing. And in leadership and just kicking ass. And I'm inspired by each and every one of them. And I think there is room for more.
Yes.
There is room for minorities. There is room for more women. And you know what? If you want it, you can have it, right? It's also like making it, I talk to women all the time and I say, do you want to be in leadership? I mean, I can say something. I have a client who is, and let me just show you how, to connect. And so sometimes it's just about having those conversations and believing that it's okay to take a chance. But I think what you're after and what you're pointing out is incredibly powerful, because if women could, again, it just completely embrace their ability to communicate with a jury without having to try a case like a man, as you say, that stuck with me. I think we can be very, very persuasive and get the justice and care that the clients need and deserve. And look at me talking like I'm a trial lawyer. I want to be, but it's good to just see the community of women do so well, and we just want it to grow. So what is your message as a final question to lawyers who are struggling, or probably where you were when you decided you wanted to give up? Like they can't get the juice out of their profession. What do you recommend? Because a lot of lawyers tune into this podcast, and I will get calls and emails after I release a podcast, and people say, man, like I feel so much of what is being shared in the podcast. I feel just as lost, or just as, confused sometimes about why I'm doing what I do. What's the message for those people?
Well, first of all, I did quit. In my mind, I was gone. Along the way, some folks try to convince me in the acting world, try to convince me that I look like Antonio Banderas, and I go like, where? In the white of the eye?
Yeah.
There has to be a balance, right? And unfortunately, you have to turn inside to find that balance. But we need travelers. We need travelers for people. And sometimes, if you join the river that flows into, you get the case, you send it to the insurance company, you settle it, or you take a trial and you lose, you get discouraged. I got to a point right now, Mirena, I do not speak to adjusters. I think it's been like 12, 15 years that I don't speak to adjusters. I don't try to settle a case. Somebody else settles the case, that's right. But to me, it's like, look, this is what happened. This is the value. If you guys are interested, great. If not, I'll see you after the verdict. If I don't have anything to say because the verdict didn't go well, great. Yeah, but if I have something to say, then you'll be the one asking for forgiveness and pleading.
Yeah.
I think that when you find the confluence of their energy, what you bring to the table as wanting to help, along with the fact that there will be ups and downs. There will be amazing days where people are going to ask you to stand up in front of 200 lawyers and tell them how you did it. And there will be days where you just want to be left alone, like Gloria Swanson. If you embrace the fact that all of that is who you are, then I was told to keep on breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow will be a better day. You just keep on breathing, and we need you. I tell people who are thinking about going to the law, be a lawyer. We need you, but don't work for insurance companies. Work for the people. And if you are already one working for people, stay in it. Tomorrow will be a better day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Alejandro. It's been a great pleasure and honor to have you on. Again, I always am captivated by what you have to say and our conversations, and I look forward to the next one.
Well, you're very kind. I trust that I haven't bored you too much.
No, this is the highlight of my day. This is great. Thank you so much. And I know I'm going to see you soon in person.
Be well. Take care.
You too.